Hello, and welcome to the Thyroid Warrior podcast. I'm Ebony, and I'm here as your wellness facilitator. I'm going to be sharing my experiences in managing Hashimoto's disease, and I really hope that it'll help you on your personal journey. Keep in mind, however, this does not substitute as medical advice. It is only for your information and motivational purposes only. Now, let's get started. Hello, friends. I am very happy to be back, and I actually had a very bad flare-up over the last couple of weeks, and that definitely reminded me of a lot of things that are so important for us to talk about in the next couple of episodes. So, truth be told, I did try to record a few episodes actually, and then I realized that I sounded incredibly angry in all of them. But I had a good reason to. And the biggest reason why I felt very upset while I was recording a couple of those episodes was because a few things. One, I realized that there was a lot of shock during my last primary care visit, and two, I also reviewed my note and realized that there were some things that were documented that just didn't happen during my visit, and it's a big reason why I want to share with you some additional information that may apply to you depending on where you live. But in the US, we have what's called the 21st Century Cures Act that went into legislation, but I want to set the stage with you by talking about what happened in my last endocrinology. Actually, it was just my primary care visit. My endocrinology visit went okay, but today I actually want to talk about my primary care. So with that appointment, I saw them virtually last year because of the pandemic, and that actually opened a whole can of worms in terms of trying to get my blood drawn at the time of my last visit, which did not go well, and I ended up waiting almost a year, which it was just bad. So I talk to you guys all the time about making sure you write things down, make sure you have dates and details and all of those things. And that's exactly what I did when I went to the doctor's office. And she was not expecting me to have all of that information in front of me. And as I talked to other friends that are doctors, they were just like, yeah, Ebony, like most patients do not come in prepared with what they've eaten, like their exercise routines, what medications they're taking. Like they just don't have that. And unfortunately, some patients have way too many medications in the first place. So it's hard to even keep up with those things. But we a lot of times don't have the type of relationship that's structured in such a way that I can provide you with this information from a patient perspective and from a physician perspective or a healthcare provider perspective. It's challenging to sometimes communicate to each other about what we need. So I did exactly everything that I always encourage you all to do. And just know that sometimes your healthcare providers may be shocked when you are providing them with this information, but ultimately it is very helpful. The problem, however, that I had was once I got my after visit summary, which kind of outlined what goes on, because at my organization, we have results release, and you as the patient may end up seeing your results before your doctor can see them. And it's encouraged that you have a conversation with them so that you're not freaking out before you actually have someone be able to interpret what those results mean. Now, what I did see that actually really got me upset was I Notice that all of my labs came back abnormal. All of them. All of them. And that has not happened in almost 10 years. So I sent my doc a message. I was like, hey, my lab results are starting to come back funny. Can we get my TPO antibodies, my T3, my T4? Let's look at the reverse T3 and T. Like, let's just look at everything. I'm concerned because I haven't been feeling well. And you know, when doctors ask you like, oh, how are you been feeling? It's like, I'm tired. I'm tired all the time. It does not matter. I'm tired. My body is attacking itself. I'm tired. I don't know what else you want me to say. You kind of just get used to the fatigue, unfortunately. But I knew that I had been experiencing more fatigue than what is typical for me, which is why I wanted to go in to see my primary care. One, because I wanted to make sure that I still wanted to see her. And two, I wanted her to actually examine my thyroid gland. And also because I had the history or had been going to follow up on my breast exams and my ultrasounds. And I'm like, hey, just want to make sure I'm still doing my self breast checks properly as well. So it was a twofold visit. The reason why I partially got upset was one, when I sent the message about those things, she basically said, well, all your labs aren't back yet. When they come back, I'll send you a letter. And I was like, well, that's not what my note said. So these labs that you have ordered, I don't see those in the note that you wrote. Because I was like, hey, I just went to get my blood drawn. Can we pull these labs as an add-on? Because remember, it depends on the lab, but you have 24 to 48 hours to request an additional lab result or lab test to be used from that blood. So that's why I requested it, because I didn't see it in the note that she wrote. And then for me to have gotten that response, I'm like, well, if you would have documented that, then I wouldn't have had any reason to have asked you, can we do this? That's the part that pissed me off. That was part one. Part two was when I looked at the note that she wrote. Now, mind you, I went in, I said all these things, I did all the things. The other issue that I had was when I looked at her note, it said that she counseled me on reducing my sodium and caffeine intake and how I should eat plenty of fruits and vegetables and do resistance training, 5 to 7 times a week. When in the note earlier, she wrote all of that down and how I did none of it. So sometimes doctors use templates, and sometimes they don't edit those or pay attention to that. Yeah. So that really got me upset because I took the time to prepare all of that information only for you to have kind of sort of paid attention when I was talking to you. Then I know you're also weren't prepared for me to have had all that information. And then the next part of that is you don't document the right information in my chart. I got a problem with that. I'm gonna contact the office to be like, hey, can y'all fix this? Here's why I was able to see her note. And this is important. Because of the 21st Century Cures Act, at least here in the States, specifically Maryland or the DMV area, based upon the healthcare system that I go to, they are in line with that final rule. And the rule was basically designed to be able to basically increase collaboration, innovation, and really and truly work to give us as the patients more choices, and it's helping to be able to utilize our phones to access our healthcare data. It's using different ways of having programs communicate with each other to make it easier on us. But it also gives us the ability as patients to be able to access your electronic health information without having to pay for it. So, and if a healthcare organization, there are a few things that are blocked from being immediately released to the patient. And I highly recommend that you take a spin over at healthit.gov to look up the ONC Cures Act final rules so that you can kind of get an understanding of some of the things that are blocked in the fact sheets that they have there. But it's really important that you pay attention to this. Now, it's a double-edged sword because with that also, you have to consider, as of April of this year, you can see a lot of these things. So you have to think about, if you use an electronic health record, you may notice that when you log into your patient portal, that you now have access to your doctor's or healthcare provider's notes. Now, for some patients, that presents a problem because there, depending on your condition, is a ton of information that has been documented about you, and it's not exactly written in the most patient-friendly language. And I know at the organization that I work in, we really had conversations and sessions with doctors about how to write a more patient-friendly note. But I can't say that that's the case for every clinician that writes notes, because sometimes they dictate them and you don't always think about what you're saying in terms of, if a patient looks at this, what will they think? Will they understand it? Will this cause more confusion? Will this cause more alarm? If you are a patient that is pregnant and you have to get a full genetic panel, that may be startling. And there are things that you may not understand that has to be completed by a healthcare provider, and it just causes a lot of anxiety. But it's also causing a lot of anxiety on the part of the provider, especially if you do have a good relationship with your provider and they want to be able to give you that time and attention to explain things to you. But because all of their information is released, sometimes that can be challenging and create a challenge in communication amongst patients and doctors. So it's a very slippery slope. And again, there are some exceptions to this in terms of what data is released, but it's really, really important for you to have a conversation with your doctor about what this means for you and how you're really getting that information, because you have to be mindful about HIPAA in terms of certain mental health notes, in terms of certain genetic disorders. Those things aren't released. So it's going to be critical that you take some time at your next appointment to ask, does the 21st Century Cures Act apply for me? 9 times out of 10, the answer is going to be yes, but you want to talk about what lab results you're going to have done, what procedures you're having done, surgeries, especially if you have an elderly loved one or parent, or even if you have a child, because again, in some areas, once you turn 13, that you no longer have access to that patient's chart, and you have to access it via a proxy process. So there are a lot of things that go into this and that can get really complicated. So this is why I'm urging you to have those conversations with the healthcare organizations that you are interfacing or interacting with, because that's going to be very important, not only for you, but also for your healthcare organization. So I really want to encourage you to go to healthit.gov, particularly if you are in the US. You definitely want to double check when it comes to your country in particular, depending on where you're listening to this from. But healthit.gov has all of the information about the 21st Century Cures Act. It has information about, different fact sheets that you can look at, information blocking, what it means. There's a ruling. There are high level overviews about what it is. There are various changes and clarifications to the rule itself, as well as different webinars that you can actually go and watch as it relates to pediatric care, compliance, different interfaces. And this act itself really goes back to, I want to say, about 2015. I remember hearing about it, and it kind of got postponed a few times, but there is a lot of information for you on this page. So I want you to take some time, go check it out. This is another scenario in which it's important to write down the questions that you have and send these to your doctor ahead of time so that you'll be able to have a conversation about what this means for you. So that is definitely firsthand experience for me in terms of understanding why this rule is so important, because it took some time for me to A, digest it, B, to realize, hey, wait a minute, when this information isn't accurate, I now have to go and contact my health information management department to say, this is incorrect. I need an adjustment made to my medical record because the note is wrong. That's not what was discussed. And I also get the opportunity to make sure that I can follow up with different tests and things that I need. And if I don't get those things at that visit, I now have a point of reference where I can go elsewhere and say, this is what was ordered at my last visit. Now I actually need to order these things. So it was a very eye-opening experience, but it also taught me a lot. And it's another reason why I want to shed light on how to navigate the healthcare system, because had I not been working in healthcare, had I not known about a lot of these things, it would have been a real shock to my system to have seen all of these things. And I got an opportunity to tell my family about it and to prepare them so that they understood why now all of a sudden they were getting all of these values in their charts and all these notifications. So I really encourage you to go check out the website, write down your questions, watch the webinars. They have various articles from a media perspective that you can read in more plain language. And I want you to start taking a look at this. And over the next couple of episodes, we are going to start talking more about these types of things, especially from a health literacy perspective, from an interpreter perspective. If you need to have someone or a family member to be with you, how do you make sure that you actually get what you need? and how to work with a medical interpreter. I will shed light on why sometimes you can't have a loved one in there with you, and in terms of being that interpreter. So we're going to talk a lot about those things over the next couple of weeks, and I'm just excited that I get to share this information and what I learned personally to be able to help you. So let me know if this was helpful. You can go to hello@joyfulebony.com and just let me know how things are going. How are you doing? And what were some of your biggest takeaways from this episode? I love to hear it. And with that, take care. Okay, thyroid warriors, get out there and take things one step at a time. Remember, reflect on your triumphs, know that you are doing your best, and do what you need to do in order to be well. I would absolutely love it if you subscribe to this podcast and share this episode with a friend. And don't forget, leave me a review. I read those and try very hard to improve the show based upon your feedback. So I'd love to hear from you. And with that, be happy, be whole, and be well. Take care.